All right, so this is just an introduction to the Autodesk Maya interface. I'm just going to quickly kind of go over everything, and then we'll go from there. All right, so what you can see on the very top here is basically our main menu. So File does what you would typically expect. It lets you save and open files, export files, things like that. Things that deal with basically file movement and that sort of thing. Some of that stuff's important. Edit does basically the same thing you'd expect it to do as well. So you can copy, you can paste, you can duplicate. Not much more than that, really. Some grouping. Create does what the name suggests. Basically, it creates things. So you can create polygon primitives, which is what we're going to primarily be using. Okay, so like I can create a cube, and then there's a cube. I hit delete to delete it. Lights, cameras, basically creates the various things. Select, we're not going to use this at all because this you will just use hotkeys to do. Because it'd be kind of annoying if you're trying to expand a selection or select or contract one. You have to like click up here, then click on it, then click on it again, then click on it, then click on it. It just won't be very good. So we're not going to use that really at all. Modify will allow you to basically change some things about the model. We're only really going to use freeze transformation, modify center pivot, and center pivot. And that's pretty much it. Everything else we can get to other places. Display basically deals with the display of the things that you see here. So for instance, right now I'm missing a toolbar. So if I go down to, where would that be? Show, heads up display. Yeah, I don't really care. Anyway, but that's what that does. It'll also do your heads up display. So like for instance, this perspective and this thing are both part of the heads up display because it's inside the viewport. Windows. So Maya uses a lot of sub windows. So for instance, like if I want to deal with materials, it's the hypershade. And so this will have all the materials in the scene that are attached to things. So like if I need to apply or change or anything with materials, you do that in hypershade. You know, there's the hypergraph hierarchy. So like this shows all, well, there's nothing in there. Here we go. This shows all the objects that are in there, right? And I can see like the nodes that they're made out of. That's the hypergraph. But basically, it's all the windows that usually pop up. Oh, there it is, UI elements. So I'll just put the toolbox on. Boom, there it is. Let's go ahead and put, come on. How do I get you over there? I don't want to use it anyway, but it's kind of weird that it's there. Yeah, and then they have different workspaces, but honestly, you don't really need those. If for some reason your thing gets weird, like things get ripped off, just go ahead and click on Reset Maya Classic, and that will reset the. Let me collapse or expand. That's weird. That'll go ahead and reset. Like so, if things get like wonky or it doesn't look right, just Windows workspaces and just reset Maya Classic to factory default. Okay, and then there's these other ones too. We're just going to use Maya Classic. I find that to be the most useful. Okay, everything past Windows. So see how it says Mesh, Edit Mesh, Mesh Tools, blah, 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 blah. See how they're all basically, these are all model-specific things. That is based off of this. This is the menu set selector. So if I change rigging, you're going to see after Windows, it turns into skeleton, skin, deform, constraint, things that deal with bending and flexing the model. If I go to rendering, you're going to get texturing and rendering and lighting and shading and things like that deal with basically making images out of your 3D work here. So that is actually based off of these menu sets. Leave yours at modeling. We'll almost exclusively use modeling except for like maybe twice. The other ones you can get to the things you need in the other ones in other ways, and it's just not that useful. So you can leave that up there. Then I think this is called like the status bar or something, but basically we don't really need that much up here. There'll be like times specifically when we use things. So like there's most of the stuff underneath here, what they are just quick shortcut buttons that are things that you can do other places, but this way you can just click a button and do it instead of having to go through a menu, okay? So like for instance, a new scene, I can click on this. This will open up a file. This will save a file, undo, redo, that kind of stuff. This is the type of things that are selectable currently. So right now I can select any type of object. But if I want to make it, like right now, see this object? If I want to make it so I can't select it, if I click that off, you'll see I can't select meshes anymore, okay? Also, when you're like, what is this? I think it will pop up. Okay, it doesn't. But if you look down here, you'll see that it'll actually tell you when you hover over objects what they are. So that's helpful. And then this deals with different types of snapping, but we use hotkeys. So for instance, if I hold V, you'll see that point snapping comes up, C, curve snapping, X, grid snapping. So we don't really use that. We will use a live, make a surface live later on. Symmetry, so if you have object X symmetry, when I go to like, come on, there we go. If I grab something on one side, automatically grabs it on the other. That's symmetry. I'm just gonna turn that back off for now. And then these deal with rendering. What else is in here? I don't really find anything useful. You can expand and collapse these with these little things here, which may or may not find useful. These deal with rendering, so if you click on this one, it will render out, which probably is going to render out black right now because I don't have any lights in there. I don't even know if it's going to try to render. Yeah, there's no lights in there. So that's what these deal with, and then I don't really care about that. This is another way of navigating the workspaces, but honestly, I don't see any reason to do it anyway. So that's what those are up there. Next, what we have is what we call the shelf. The shelf is super handy. Use that a whole ton. It's really cool. So much like the menu sets, you'll see there's ones for different things, right? So different things you might be doing at a time. So like for rigging, there's some like things here, and sculpting has some. And, there's all sorts of, they're almost a little bit more specific. You keep it on poly modeling because we're mostly just going to use these ones here. But what's also neat is that you can actually go to the shelf editor. You can make your own custom shelf. So especially like later on in the industry when you're working and stuff, you can like, if you're a person and all you do is rig, you could make a new shelf and have just like custom buttons up there that do specific things that you click on instead of having to go through a menu and stuff. So anything that you can do can actually be thrown up into here. So for instance, I like to slide edges, right? So I could go to, let me see. Oh, yeah, I'm on modeling. Go to mesh tools and go to slide edge. And if I hold Control and Shift and middle click, you'll see that tool popped up right here. I don't know if you saw it or not. So I can right click and just delete it. But if I'll do it again so you can see. Control Shift middle click. And now whenever I want that tool, instead of going up there, I can just click on it. So you can add any kind of tools that you might be using a whole ton. They can be added to the shelf. But basically they're just hotkeys. So earlier I made this sphere. I could just click on sphere. And it does the same thing as going up there. Going up here will give me more options, because I can go to this and hit the option box, and But that's what the shelf does. So it's basically they're quick buttons just to do things that you want to do. Right? So super handy. Over on the right here is the toolbox, which quite frankly you shouldn't be using, because all of these you're going to have to just learn the hotkeys to do them. These are not very useful for us. So I would tell you by default, go to Windows, UI Elements, and just turn Toolbox off. You want to have as much screen real estate as you possibly can. It's just better. Okay, so just get used to having more workspace and not less. All right, so I'm going to turn that off because you should just use hotkeys. If you're clicking on those things trying to do stuff, trust me, you're going to be going super slow. Okay, then after that, we'll just do the bottom here. This is the time slider, right? So basically, these are frames. So each one of these, you can see little ticks, right? So if we're doing 24 frames per second, there's 1 second, there's 2 seconds, 3 seconds, so on and so forth. Okay, that's what that is. Underneath it is the range slider. So basically, it just shows how much is in there. But honestly, it's entirely relative. I could make this like 500, and then just expand this down. And I could just put it back to 200. It really doesn't change anything. So just be aware that's what it is. The one is the total, that's the range, and the ones on the inside are what's currently visible. And you can also just grab these sliders and do it that way too. So if you only want to show one section. It's useful when we get to animation and stuff. It's not going to be useful for us right now. Underneath that, you have these two things here. So we can quickly write Mel code, Maya Embedded Language. We're not going to be doing that. That's like advanced stuff. But basically, Maya has its own computer language that you can code into it to make it do things, which is pretty cool. That's actually one of the main reasons why Maya is super powerful. Is just because you can make it do things you need it to, like through code and what have you. Then over here, if you click on this will actually bring up the script editor, so you can actually manually type in here what you want. If there's a weird error or something's like wrong or it doesn't like what you did, you'll see something, it'll turn red down here. Red is bad. Purple is really bad. Yellow is like kind of bad. It's like DEFCON. So different levels, but keep an eye on down here. Just, you know. These are just settings. So right now this is auto key on and off. This is, so basically, once you set a key on something, if you move it in a different place and time, it will automatically create a key, and you don't have to manually key it anymore. This is a guy running away from getting a ninja star thrown at him. This is just the animation settings, so time slider settings. So you can change the frame rate. Right now it's on play every frame, which is something we have to turn off, but I'm going to leave it on for now. Then over here are our panels, and kind of like in Photoshop or other ones where, like, you know, the main things are over on the left here. The stuff on the right are usually like, they're a little bit more flexible, although we don't have as many of them. So what you're going to see is that basically these ones here are these buttons up here. So let's put you over here too. Get in there. Join the party. Damn. Oh, I almost said it. Darn it. Is that better? I think I did okay. There we go. Now he's in there too. But basically these will show up there, and they're just things that are here, okay? In the beginning, the only ones we're really going to concern ourselves with are just two. The channel box. You can also get to them by tabs if they're already open, okay? Let's just turn all these off. Okay. The only one you're really going to concern yourself, so if they aren't there at all, just hit the, man, it like really wants it big. The channel box and the attribute editor, okay? These are the two that we're really going to use a lot. So, to get an idea of it, go ahead and click on a sphere, okay? So click on a sphere. And then that will build a sphere. Yours might look different. It's probably got more or less polys. Don't worry about that. It's just want you to have an object. What the channel box will do over here that you're going to see is that basically it gives you all the information. So right here is the grid, right? And you see how there's a darker line here and a darker line here, right? You don't really see one this way, but there would be one. It's just invisible. I'll show you how to navigate in a second too. But this grid here, these are each one unit. So watch. If I move this back one unit, approximately 1 unit, you're going to see that this number, the z, becomes -1. And if I type in +1, it'll move forward. And if I type in, you know, let's say I want to move it up 5, I'll type 5, and now it's up, okay? So anything I do here, you can see the numbers change. They correspond to each other, okay? So I can do it in here, or I can do it in here. It's particularly useful if, like, you're trying to rotate something, and, like, I want it to be 90 degrees. I will usually start to turn it, and then I'll just finish it here and type in, like, -90. And make sure it's like perfectly 90 degrees. Okay. I'm just going to click and drag and 0. Okay. So this only shows the main things, right? It just shows translate, which is movement, rotate, and scale, which is obviously scale. It doesn't really show too much more than that. It will show other inputs in here, but the last couple times I've been using this has actually been crashing a bit for me, so I'm a little bit wary to touch any of this. It also shows this display panel here and this animation layers. Oops, don't want to do that yet. Basically, what that does is that you can add objects to it. And so let's say I add that. I can turn the visibility off and on. It's kind of like Photoshop layers, but it doesn't matter which ones are on top of other ones. It's just sort of a way of organizing them in a visibility way. Because you might make like an environment, and you have a character, and you're trying to animate them. The environment might be getting in the way, so you can just throw it on a viz layer and just turn it off while you're animating, and then turn it back on when it's like time to do stuff. So that's what that's for. We'll use that some as well. It's useful. And then animation layers allows you to, like, you know, animate the arms one like this and animate the legs doing something else, and then you can mix them together. That's actually a little bit closer actually to Photoshop, the animation work, layers work. Okay, so that's the channel box. The attribute editor is basically kind of the same thing, but it's like so much more. So, like, for instance, if I do pSphere 1, that's the name of this object, by the way. If you look on the channel box, it says it right here, pSphere 1. These are my rotates and translates, right? It's the same thing, but it also gives me rotation order, gives me the rotation axis. I can see the pivots, what the limits are, you know, how it's being displayed. That's just its transform node. Now, if I look at the shape node, which is the actual object itself, you can see I can start to see all this stuff, right? And then here's the thing that made it. So, like, if I change this number, you're going to see it's going to add some. See that? So that was the stuff that made it, although you don't want to play around with this later on because that might cause some issues, but I'm just going to make this 8. Yada, yada, yada. And then we have a thing that deals with the shader. And then we have the material that's applied to it. So I could change it to red. Okay. So basically, what it does is it shows most of the things that are attached to that object will show up in that attribute editor, as opposed to the channel box, which pretty much only just shows those main things. Keep it on channel box by default, because most of the stuff in the attribute editor, even myself, I'm not using most of that. There's crazy number of things, but there's like weird magic in there, because once in a while I'm trying to figure something out, and I'm like, what is this? And then you type in things, and it's like, oh. So anyways, just leave it on channel box, but we will be using this occasionally. Like, so for instance, materials, if I want to change the material of this, I can do it in here. It's a little bit better. Anyway, so that's what that's for. And then last but not least is the viewport, which is probably the thing that you've been curioso about for a while. So this is the way it works. Go ahead, and you should have an object still, right? So I have this object. To rotate, this is going to be a little bit weird. You're going to need a 3-button mouse. Most mice are 3 buttons. The third button is the wheel itself. So there's that little scrolly wheel, which you can actually use to zoom in and out, although I'm not a big fan of it, but you can use that. But it usually, you can actually push in on it. I don't know, you can't hear it, but you can push in on it, and that allows you to use that as a button as well. Okay. Some of them actually have third buttons. I had a mouse that did, but it broke. Anyway, so the way that you rotate, pan, and move is this. You hold the Alt or Option key on a Mac. You click with your left mouse, your normal clicking mouse. Click, and then you just drag. Click and drag. Alt, click, and drag will rotate around. Ooh. Right? It's pretty exciting. Pretty exciting stuff. Okay? To pan, move the camera, is Alt, middle mouse button. Alt, and then click in the wheel ball thing. And then click and drag. Alt, click, and drag. And that's how you move the camera up and down. And to zoom, I have a feeling you might know what I'm going to say. It's Alt, right mouse button, back and forth. Now you can again use the wheelie ball, but the problem is that you're going to notice, like mine's doing it too, there's usually discrete steps in it, and so I don't find it quite as useful. But I mean, I know some people are really big into it, especially the Mac mice, because those stupid, they're like the worst for scrolling. They break, and I don't know. The mice in general for Macs are terrible. So if you do have a Mac, I would highly suggest getting not a Mac mouse, or get like a real mouse. If you are on a laptop with a trackpad, PC or Mac, you're gonna need a mouse. You can't use that. It's not physically possible, because a lot of them now, they don't even have buttons, and you're not gonna be able to navigate. It's gonna be way too hard. So don't plan on you doing that. You're gonna have to get a mouse. But more than likely, if you're in this program, you're taking this class, you're probably playing games, you probably have a mouse. Okay. Great. So, yeah, that's how you pan, move, rotate, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Now, up at the top here are basically the viewport settings. So you can see there's certain things in here that you can kind of do, but most of that you don't have to worry about. The things that you might care about are these. So this will turn the grid on and off. Might be handy to you. This will do wireframe, flat shaded, default shaded, which is currently red anyway, wireframe unshaded. So shaded mean like it has like a surface. Textured, which means if you have if it's painted on, that will show the image that's laid over top of it. And then lighting, which obviously is going to show up as black. And then if you have lighting on, you can do shadows. But again, there's nothing else in the scene, so there's nothing to make shadows of. That's all you really need to know. This is ambient and blurring and whatever, but those aren't super handy. If we do any more, I'll show you those. Those can also be done by doing this. You can hit 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Actually, it didn't really do anything. But anyway, I'm going to go back to 5. So that's what those do. So it's the same as pushing those up there. So if you see me quickly do it, I'm hitting a button. There's a million hotkeys for Maya. Okay. So we know how to move, rotate, pan. I want you to kind of play around, and I want you to go around the object here, just so you get an idea of how that works. Great. I'm going to assume that you did that. You can pause it if you need to. Okay, so you need to also, while you are working, constantly rotate so you can see what it looks like. Constantly look around the surface and be like, okay, that looks all right. Now what I want you to do is pick one of these shapes, your favorite shape, whatever shape you think you should make. Can you guess which one I'm going to pick? You gosh darn right I'm going to choose a cone, right? Because Anyway, so what we're going to do is I'm going to take this cone and I'm going to show you. So it's going to start off right in origin. So you're going to be like, how do I move things? We got rid of the toolbar because you're going to be using so many of this. You're going to be doing this so much. You need to use the hotkeys. So it's Q, W, E, and R. Okay? Q, W, E, and R. That's what you need to know. You keep your hands basically on home row. You know your home row stuff. But Q is select. So I click on this, that's select. Okay? It doesn't do anything beyond selection, but it is useful because like if I'm in rotate and I'm trying to click on this guy, see how I can't click on it because the stupid manipulator's in the way? If I hit Q, I can get to it. So it does have usefulness. It might seem stupid, but that's Q. W is translate, or I think they call it move actually, but basically it will translate it. Now to translate, I want you to do this. You'll see there's these handles here, right? If you grab this, pull up, and then you can grab this, pull over, right? And you want to grab the handles, like so, okay? The reason why we're doing it like that, don't grab it by the middle. Because here's the thing. Let's say I put this down, and I'm like, oh, I need to go up. Let's grab it by the middle. Did I just pull it straight up? Is that good? You know it ain't. If I rotate, you're going to see, whoop. I don't know if you can tell, but it moved it this way a little bit. Because when you grab it by the center, it's moving all axes, which is not good because you can't really control the depth axis that much. So generally speaking, do not grab by the center when you're using the move tool, okay? You want to grab by the manipulators. Now, let's say I want to move it up and over. You can do this. I don't have a problem with this. See these little squares? These little squares here? You can grab this, and that will move 2 axes, but not the third one. So this one will allow me to move up and these ways, but you'll see it does not move it this way, okay? So those are fine to use as well if you want to be fancy. But that's how you do it, okay? So that's W, and then we have E and R. So R must be rotate, right? Nope, it's E, because that doesn't make any sense. I don't know. You got me, man. You got me. You know what's funny? I've seen other programs try to make R rotate because like that just makes sense. And then in a year or two, like if it's a new program, they go back to being the other way. I think because people probably complain because old dogs don't want to learn new tricks. So anyway, so E is rotate. Same rules as the move tool, right? Don't click and drag by the center because it's moving it in all axes and it's hard to tell. Sometimes it's okay. Like when I'm animating characters, I might grab it by the center because I want to move it in all axes. But most of the time, you want to grab it by these themselves. Another thing to take into account is this, okay? You see how each one is color-coded. This one is red, this one's green, and this one is blue. Although they're not blue when I'm hovering over them. But those correspond to this. So for instance, I'm like, oh, I want to rotate it 90 degrees on this blue. I could try to grab it, or I could go, okay, so it's the blue rotate, which is rotate Z, and I'll type in 90, okay? Now another thing is the movement here. So you'll notice that there's positive and negative values. See how the blue arrow is pointing this way? See how there's blue Z is on this side? That means this is the positive side, this is negative. That also means that Z is our depth. That'd be like this for us. Positive Z is forward. So this would be the front if this was my character. That's how I'd want to model it. All right. So yeah, use the handles, Luke. There is this other one too. You might go, I'll just use that guy. That's rotating it. What that's doing is that circle, you can kind of tell, watch, no matter where I am, it's always perpendicular to my camera. So basically, wherever my camera is, it's going to rotate it around that, which I can't even think of a use for that. I don't know why that even exists. I find it annoying. So don't grab that one either. That also isn't going to help you, okay? So that's rotate. Let me move it over here a little bit more. And then let's scale, R. So what do you think I'm going to tell you about scale? Only grab these, right? Nope, actually the opposite. So you know like when you're doing images and you want to like scale like a picture, right? You want to make sure you scale it proportionately. So you used to hold shift, but now in Photoshop you don't hold shift. But basically you try to lock the proportions. Most of the time when you're scaling, you generally want to lock the proportions. So I'm just going to click, I would go like that. So this one you almost always want to grab it by the center. Because otherwise you might like, oh, I'm going to scale it bigger. And it's unlike, you can see it's not even the right proportions. It's going to be difficult to keep it proportionate. Even if I wanted to make this like taller and thinner, what I would do is I would make it thinner first, then I would grab the taller one. You see what I'm saying? So when you can actually do it this way too, but I don't know, it feels weird doing it this way. I don't usually use the little squares when doing that stuff. Okay. But yeah, so generally you want to grab that by the center. So a couple of other quick little things that might be helpful. All right. One is this. You might be like lost in space. I don't know if you watched the new Netflix series. It's not that great. I don't hate it, but it's just, I don't know. I feel like pooping. So now you can see, I have no idea. Ah, crap, you can see it. Pretend you can't see it. I gotta get out of here. Okay, so let's say I'm out in outer space. I don't know where I am. If you hit A, the letter A, like articulated aardvark, that will frame all. It means it'll take everything that's in the scene and frame to it. So you can see, depending on how close these are, so let's say I put it closer, right, and I go over here and hit A, you can see I'm closer to them because it's going to fit both of them in my screen, okay? So that's A. Another thing that's super helpful is this. It's frame. If I click on this and hit F, now I am framed on that. And if I go on this guy and hit F, I am now framed on that guy. Ooh, pretty exciting stuff. Now, this might be an issue too. So you're like, okay, so this is pan, zoom, and rotate, right? So we're rotating the camera. We're actually not rotating the camera. Here's what you have to understand. If we were rotating the camera, it would look like this. I'm going to select the camera real quick. Let's try rotating it on just the Y here. This is rotating the camera, right? That doesn't really help us much. What we're actually doing is we're rotating, like let's say this is the camera and this is the point. We're rotating around a fixed point. You see what I'm saying? But it is possible to like, let me move this guy back so you can kind of see what I'm saying. It is possible to like, let's say I'm trying to work on this thing here, right? Like you can see like, if I'm trying to work on this cone, I'm like, all right, and I just want to, it's like really hard. And the reason why is that there's a focal point that I'm rotating around. So one way of fixing that is just to frame it. So let's say I'm trying to work on this. I'll F, even if I see it. Because now you're going to notice that that becomes my center point. Okay, so that's super useful as well when you're working in here. Okay, so delete that, delete that. What else I need to cover? So yeah, you can make things there. I think I covered it in the other one. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think that's everything we need. So in the lab that you're gonna do this week, we're gonna make like a little dinosaur guy. I want you to make whatever you want though. Normally I want you to make exactly what I make, but in this case you can just make whatever you want because it should be relatively the same. In fact, I encourage it. But you don't have to if you feel more comfortable just doing exactly the same thing. We're gonna cover kind of more stuff from this. But for right now, what I want you to do when you think about it is just to rotate around, get comfortable navigating, doing that, and then moving, moving objects, right? Get comfortable moving objects and rotating them, and that. So basically, kind of the Alt, right, middle, left mouse button thing, as well as the Q, W, E, and R. Okay. Just get used to that, and hopefully that will be a little bit better. But yeah, that's good. So there's your intro to Maya.